Welcome everyone, Grand Master Dr. Thor Templar here, and I'm going to cover a very important subject that needs clarification for all guild members and those people interested in the occult sciences. Now, the occult sciences is a special type of occultism, and people need to understand that this isn't average occultism, if there is such a thing. Occultism is difficult to define the rest of the occultism because there's so many different areas of it. But it is important to understand that everything in occultism birthed from the occult sciences, just as all science, religion, etc., all came from originally the occult sciences, which were taught and understood in ancient mystery schools. And it's important to use proper terminology and understand how the occult sciences work. You know, when you start using names like rituals and psychic powers and spells and demons and angels and gods, you start moving into areas that are completely out of the normal functioning of the world by what is considered common science. Now, as an occult scientist, they're part of our normal world, and that is the fact that these are subatomic energy forms. Now, they are frequencies, they are energies that you tap into, add into your already established occult energy fields. So it's a very unique area of study, and occult scientists are just that. They're not sorcerers, they're not witches, they're not occultists. I mean, we throw these terms around for general understanding because they've been used a lot, but the problem is all occult terms are pretty much like the term psychic, which has pretty much been so overused and so downgraded that it has little or no value. Actually, it has a negative meaning now. Psychics are goo-goo, misty, woo-boo-boo-boo people that don't seem to know what they're doing, and are people that are kind of out of in touch with society. Of course, if anybody's ever met any scientific people and their weird, bizarre habits and general ways of functioning, regular scientists are quite odd people in general. So, when you get into these areas, you move away from and empower and add fuel to the fire of those critics out there. So the whole idea is you have to understand that all the occult sciences are based on subatomic energy fields that surround you. And the fact that common, ignorant, backward science doesn't understand these, well, they don't understand anything, and they can't even cure the common cold or pimples. So let's quite understand where regular science comes from. Now, in the beginning, of course, the mystery schools blended the subatomic particle understanding, which are translated into spirits and energies, things like luck, things like success energies, all these things that surround you all the time that are unable to be classified by the scientists out there who want to label everything. Because of the fact that they are unable to do it and don't have really the mental capacity to do it. So it takes a very advanced understanding to work with these kind of energies and measure them. And they are measurable. They are projectable. These energies can be created. They can be destroyed like any energy forms. And they are directly connected to all matter on this planet. So that's another thing that seems to be a problem with regular science is they don't understand all this. They sit in their $1,000,000 institutions reproducing the same old crap research that they've done all the time, and then somehow want to hold this up as something of value when they really haven't solved any of our world problems. They haven't solved any health problems. They haven't solved any energy problems. What have they done? Science is a complete failure. We have a bunch of toys that do absolutely nothing. The world is falling apart and on fire. We have an app to work a toy train from. I mean, really, the kind of technology we have, and we're getting higher definition and 2 and 3K screens so things look better. Well, I mean, this is just the actual monitor, or starting from a TV tube has been around for 70 years. The fact that it's getting better and it's changed in the way that it's formulated to some extent, going from cathode to LED to plasmas to all these other things, is still the fact that this is old technology that's just being refined. There is no new technologies. Holographic images are over 40 years old. Disney had holographic images in the early 60s, yet we don't have any of those today. They're just barely getting into that for the public now. So, I mean, all this is old technology. A phone certainly is nothing new. The fact that it no longer has a wire and there's a battery in it doesn't change the fact that it's a phone. So, listening to anyone that tells you that they seem to know something because they went to school and they have a degree of being educated to the point of stupidity, which is really what it is. I mean, the higher educated I find most people, the stupider they are. And they can't even understand common technologies, which I've seen in my own personal life from generals and vice presidents who couldn't even set their alarm systems in their houses. So the whole idea is that this is quite shocking to believe anything that these idiots tell you. So the point is that these are all part of the natural world. They don't think it's part of the natural world. They're just wrong. And they like to trap you by using words like paranormal. Para means part normal. Well, things can't be part normal. They're either normal or not. So they trap you into words like this. So be very careful. It's perfectly normal that there are spirits and that you can communicate with these spirits, so-called, that have passed. It's perfectly normal to communicate with God forms and spirits and all these other things. And it's perfectly normal to generate energy such as success, luck, healing, and everything else. It's all part of the normal world. They don't understand that because, after all, they're cavemen functioning with rocks and sticks, while the occult scientists are in rocket ships to other realities and dimensions. And, this is why we have to quite understand here, and while people may think it's a little outrageous or amusing to use terms like intergalactic, we have absolutely nothing to learn from this plane of existence. Plain and simple. Whatever information and knowledge is here past the natural world has no value to us whatsoever. So, and there's certainly nothing of value there. As I've said, science has produced absolutely nothing. Government has produced absolutely nothing. And religions have produced huge negativities which not have created the uniting of mankind. They've separated mankind even within their own religions where they massacre each other to umph degrees. And this is just not with one religion. This is with all of them. Few people understand even the story of Masada, where the Jews on the top of that mountain went there to hide and protect themselves from the Roman invasions. What they didn't tell you is that to get that particular place, there was another Jewish community there that they massacred and took over that place. Islam is constantly fighting between each other because of their two sects of Islam, so that certainly didn't do anything. And there's numerous sects of Christians which have been killing each other as well. So, I mean, there's really no difference there. The Hindus kill the Buddhists kill the Hindus. It goes on and on and on as religion has done nothing whatsoever. So it's complete and total failure. So if you want to go to those thought forms, well, I want to be spiritual, so I'm going to go to religion. What? Buddha? Well, what the hell have they ever done? They've been around for almost 3,000 years and created absolutely nothing. And the places where Buddhism is most popular tend to be the most backward places that there is. Now, we also can't judge by the fact that having clean little cities and nice streets somehow makes a society good either. So we have to be careful labeling there, but I don't find any of these very advanced thinkings. Since they parted from the occult sciences at the fall of the great societies, there has been this grasping on to foolishness to make sure that the actual functioning on this earth is nothing but destructive. So there's absolutely nothing here. We need to get off this reality of connecting into the common earth-based energies and start thinking intergalactically as a universe. You are not a citizen of a country. You are not a race. You're an intergalactic citizen. You're a citizen of the universe, and you need to think like that so you don't get caught into these silly games that they want to catch you in. So it is the occult scientist who has the background and the understanding here, and what we've lacked is organization and funding. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that there is an effort by the controllers, by those that have all these grants and everything else, to suppress this information. Not the fact that in any way it is invalid, because it's been, every time it's researched, it has been proven. And it's been proven many, many times, and we'll be documenting these over the time. All of this is a huge amount of work, of course, that is very difficult to put together in a cohesive manner to get out to the public. But that in no way means that it isn't. So, I mean, there's a huge amount of research in all of this that somehow everybody's been told that there's absolutely no proof of that. That because of Unamazing Randy and his debunker squads that go out there and have fooled a few well-meaning but ignorant scientists. We have to remember that common scientists have no background in anything except their field. Quite frankly, all of them that I've met are kind of ignorant idiots. They can talk to you about all these structures that they've been involved with and learned all these facts and figures from books. But, you know, part of the problem with all that, just like doctors tend to be because they spend so much time training themselves, is they're very socially dysfunctional. So they really don't understand that. Now, a scientist would never think that you would go in there and try and defraud them. And, of course, the Unamazing Randy, who did this farce on science, basically with his scientists, by the way, these were his people that these people went to that felt they were credible. If they weren't credible, then the whole thing doesn't matter because they were idiot scientists. Isn't that really what you have to say? So basically, this whole thing was a big setup. He got a bunch of fools to do things and supposedly even contacted these fools and said, look out for these things. There's trickery involved. But of course, you got to remember that a scientist doesn't really take information from a guy who didn't even graduate high school. And you got to remember that the debunkers are all ignorant buffoons as a general case. I mean, the leading of these things, people like Penn and Teller, Penn Jillette only graduated clown college and high school. His associate was a high school Latin teacher. Certainly not a high level of education, certainly not a high level of scientific education. Basically, that's no education. And if you're a high school teacher, that's like being not even in the minor leagues of baseball. That's like trying to get into the minor leagues, because you're not good enough to get into the minor leagues yet. You're certainly not good enough to get into professional baseball. So, I mean, these are the people, and then we have the Ghostbuster, the Mythbusters guys, who have absolutely no scientific, a whole group of 5 people with no scientific background to them whatsoever. The two main moderators there, Jamie, has a degree in Russian. Well, I'm going to take all my scientific needs to him. Vodka in wars. Oh, yes. I'm sure he's an expert on both. His little buddy there never has any education whatsoever. He spent his entire life in acting school. And, of course, after finding out he had no talent, he dropped that and went into what he's good at. Building models. You know, like that kid in the back of the room that came in with the cars and airplanes. I build models. Well, fortunately, he was able to get into special effects. You need a lot of models. So I'm assuming he had a fair amount of talent. Who knows how he really got his job. And everybody else in that team were all special effects people with absolutely no scientific background whatsoever. So these are the people that are coming after occultists and all the other illusionists who have absolutely no educational background at all. Very few of these have even went to college. I believe that David Copperfield went to New York City University. I don't know if he ever graduated, but I can't find others that have done it. Because after all, why are you going to college if you're going to have a trade? So these people have no background whatsoever, and it's, pretty insulting. Even the educated debunkers like Skeptic Magazine, the head of that, while he's highly educated in the brainwashing school of stupidity and has certificates to prove it, he doesn't have a scientific. He has psychology. He's studying the mind and other things, which is pretty much unstudied. And of course, when you get down to it, if you're not a clone, you're crazy and should be on medications or institutionalized. That's basically where Skeptic Magazine comes down to. So, these are the type of people that you have out there, and they have very poor backgrounds involved in any of this. And then, of course, you have all the shucksters and con artists in the New Age world and occultists as well, the delusional idiots, people that think Aleister Crowley is great. So, general occult people are magical people. Tend not to be educated either, and tend not to understand what it's all about, unlike an occult scientist who understands that these are all subatomic energy fields that can be measured, projected, manipulated, drawn to you, removed, etc., like any other energy field. And all of these things can be verified by all types of primitive and advanced equipment, and that can sense changes. If we had all the research equipment that could measure brain states and everything else when a person was doing something in these areas, and this has been done to some degree, we can find out which part of the brain is active and what's happening. And of course, there's a huge amount of irrefutable facts about occult science manifestations, plain and simple. And the problem is when you don't have, and we talked about this in our debunking lecture, and we do know what the answer to all this is, and the one thing about the occult sciences is that we have answers to everything. It's not the unquestionable that this can't be done or not done. But this is a question of consciousness, brain functioning that should be poured billions every year into a international research organization who doesn't have any access to grind, to research this very important area of how actually the species on this planet work. And as an occult science, we understand that the animals are using, quote, psychic or biophysical powers all the time. I should say abilities, they're not powers. That's another one of those bad words to use. So they're using this all the time to survive. So it's very, very natural, and it's throughout the entire natural world. If you really think that a hawk can see 10 miles away and identify its prey, you're pretty stupid, because while they have better vision, they're using a form of remote viewing to do all this. So, and it's all very natural because they don't have people telling them you can't do it. So, it's all about getting the mind out of the way. But, when so-called researchers go into things with prejudiced ideas, then you have a problem. When you're giving out $1 million as that goofy challenge that an amazing Randy offered, he offered it from his institute. He's going to do all the testing. It's not the fact. That's not scientific unamazing. That's very unscientific. You're getting a prejudiced viewpoint to do research. Well, research is about having neutral people in control of the money and have neutral, but he won't do that because if the facts don't come in his direction, he doesn't want to deal with it. I don't want to believe those scientists. Only these scientists are right. Well, those degrees are worthless. Harvard, Yale. My scientists from Mississippi, you know better. And this is what it comes down to. So that's not real research. So there has to be an unbiased international institution that studies all this, because ultimately this, and the reason why this doesn't happen is quite obvious. People who are empowered, people who are able to think for themselves, are not valued much in this society. As a matter of fact, they're usually persecuted and murdered. So they want you to be dependent upon technologies, about machines. And of course, who builds all this stuff? Well, the controllers build all this stuff to keep you in line. Now, this isn't overly. Religion does the same thing with a silly little book and tells you how to live and how to screw, what to drink. Well, you can't eat this fish because it feeds off the bottom. All these little things that come up that they tell you how to operate right down to your sex life, and even what you're supposed to do as a male with your penis in terms of being circumcised or not. So if this is shocking to you, then you don't quite understand. So the occult sciences and the subatomic world that this involves, which we will be detailing in books and audios and so forth, is how the world and how the universe functions. And I don't need some person who basically modern science is really less than 100 years old and changes every day. I mean, that's what science is all about. You're supposed to be doing research and modifying your original theories, which is what all science is based on. Now, a theory is maybe, looks like this theory could be a fact. But you got to understand that everything is a theory. It is not a scientific fact. Now, it may point in that direction, and you've got to use measuring sticks to somehow do proper research, but science is constantly changing as it should be and modifying itself as it's doing, going from a primitive Newtonian world into the quantum physics of how everything works today. So it really isn't complicated, and quantum physics couldn't be more of a statement of metaphysics or the occult sciences, dealing with these realities that interact with consciousness and everything else. Certainly isn't part of regular society and or science. But this is how the world works, and all serious scientists fully agree with this. Yet you'll find the debunkers and those that are in the skeptics consider quantum physics to be complete nonsense, basing on what has already been proven to be wrong, Einstein's theories of relativity, who didn't support it either. Didn't support quantum physics as a belief, but everybody else did, and I don't know why one scientist should have any value over the other, and I'm not sure how great Einstein... First of all, Einstein was a theoretical scientist. He did very little practical work, and while I found his problem with having to hump all the time fascinating, and I do love his quotes and his other things and his observations. As a basic scientist producing anything of value, I don't find anything of his in value. Thinking that something can only go as fast as the speed of light is so absurd that it isn't even discussable. It's a joke. It's a giant limitation to the entire structure of the universe, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But you have to talk about these things and go through it. I mean, since science had no other answer, they grasped upon that as they do on so many other things, and have pushed that theory for 60 or 70 years. But that doesn't in any way make it correct. It's a theory. It's a maybe. It's a maybe that seems probable at this particular time. And since everything in science pretty much now changes within 5 to 10 years, it's a ridiculous reality. And all the things you hear and everything else that science claims to produce really never comes to fruition. All these great things with stem cells and printing out organs and all. This is all complete and total nonsense that is just really feeding you information to sucker you into thinking that they're doing something when they're not, because they will produce absolutely nothing. And if we were to make all sorts of organs that fit into your body, who's going to do all these surgeries to do this? Removing a heart or a kidney or everything else is a huge surgery that requires many people and multi-surgeons and literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. And where is all this money going to come from? So, nobody even wants to face the facts of the practicalities of things, of that. Yeah, we have all these things. How is anybody going to do it? Where are all the surgeons going to come from, if that's even part of it? So all these things is kind of a joke that you hear from a regular scientists and the medical world in general. So we need to move past all those things and understand that the core of everything is the occult sciences and the subatomic particle. And everything works on this energy field that gets denser and denser into physical matter. Now, some fields don't turn physical because they are not meant to be physical. Fields such as success and luck and well-being and all of these things that are in your makeup as a human species and are connected to streams and all the other things, which we'll explain in other audios, is how matter works. Now, when you start connecting certain energies to your soul force, which is your main force within the human body, things start to get denser and form this physical nature that we experience at this point. Of course, it's really not completely physical. It's based on all these subatomic particles. And if you remove the energy from the soul force entirely and you cut the energy off to the soul force, you would basically collapse and die instantly. You'd just be nothing, because once the energies are taken, and at this particular point, if you take enough of those energies and cut off all of them, you will cut off the physical connection, and you will actually completely disappear. Now, this is real science, people, not what you've been told. But those are very advanced concepts. But it's still the fact that everything starts off as the subparticle energy field and it gets denser and denser. Let's say you're a rock, starts off as this creative energy, which then gets denser and denser until it forms physical matter. And that's exactly how everything works. So, and most scientists agree to this information on some level or not. We've been researching these things for many years, and some scientists understand this along with so many other things that are out there that people don't understand. I mean, they've already proven in the laboratory, ESP, the energy, what creates it. All of that's been proven and proven recently. This has been documented on Through the Wormhole, a documented series out there that talks about this, that there are other people who have documented this. It's all very viable and workable out there. And everyone really, when you get down to it, this is how things work. When you move away from that, then there are problems. So the whole idea is when there's problems within your energy fields, it means that you have the subatomic particle field, whatever that may be, whether it's health or money or success, that energy is not strong enough, or it has been damaged, or it has been removed for some reason or another. And these things need to be repaired. And then this is when you do projections and energizations, where you draw in from streams of energies that you connect to in the cosmos, or intergalactically, you could say, which then bring these energies to you. And that way you can replace what has been lost, so that in most instances, this means a correcting of what we consider occult science common world problems, such as love, money, success, etc. But it goes into every single field, into the spiritual, into what is connected to physical balances. So it goes into all these things that these subatomic energy fields interact with and empower you in your general life. So, that's how the occult science looks at things. Now, when you start getting into spells and rituals and you use these terminologies, this is when things start to be problematic. So, while we use some of these old terms, and we're going to be more and more using the term traditional, as we do with the traditional witchcraft and sorcery course. But, when you get a very advanced occult oil from us, you are getting a vibrational energy elixir of sorts that has been refined by different processes and chargings and using compound energies that come from plants and other substances. So, you're getting a very complicated alchemical vibrational product that connects to these fields we just talked to. They're basically subatomic energy fields that you are then using and drawing upon and holding onto and bringing into your energy fields to change a particular area there. So it's not a spell. If you use a particular god form or spirit, Well, that's a type of subatomic particle field. Now, if you were to use, let's say, an angel of protection, let's say St. Michael, that is a type of subatomic energy field that you draw into yourself to have effects on you. When you get into the more traditional descriptions of these things, which, by the way, was not the way they were originally the original terms used for them in the ancient mystery schools. These are things that have come through modern society and have been changed with the whole reality of these things. So as they've been changed and fell into disrepair and decay because of persecution mostly, we have now used these kind of terminologies which are pretty much laughed at by common society. When I did a spell or a ritual, well, these are terms to describe the subatomic energy process. And as occult scientists, we should try and avoid these terms. Yet, of course, we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. The whole idea is that there is important information and important empowerments that are available through ancient grimoires and through ancient techniques of making these and working with the subatomic energies fields. But the whole idea is people have to understand that these primitive terms and terminologies need to be updated, but we still need to see them and understand them for what they are. Symbols have power. They produce subatomic energy fields. So if you draw something like a rune or something, this vibrates a subatomic particle energy. And, this can be proved with a lot of sigils. We do this all the time. You can prove the major increase in the energy field by using a sigil. And it's shockingly so, and these can be demonstrated in a very scientific fashion. So all of these things need to be taken into consideration, and it's the way you express things. If you tell people you're doing spells and calling on entities, well, you get relegated into this world of fantasy. But we can't be too concerned with what the outside world has to say either. And the bottom line is that they won't believe anything that's ever told them because they have no intention. They have an agenda, and that agenda is to make them rule and for them to make money off of you. And that's what the whole world is really all about. It's about making money, and they're not going to change their realities to allow your reality to supersede theirs. I mean, it's just not going to happen because of the fact that they lose money and position. And that's really what it comes down to. They're not seeking truth. They're not seeking answers. They are seeking to stay in their established position of power, no matter what the cost is to society out there. A true scientist, an occult scientist, is always seeking truth of what works and what empowers everyone to go on to higher steps, to become that step above human that we are at now. So the whole idea is to reach that next level of consciousness and being, and we are not set into anything. We understand how the intergalactic world works, but the bottom line is that we are open to anything, but certainly not open to silliness and the earth plane's ridiculous primitive way of thinking about things from either a silly religious viewpoint or a silly scientific viewpoint that disregards anything that isn't really like a stone or a brick. And this has always been the case with science. And then as they start to understand the non-physicalness, the energy field realities of life, things will move on. But they're not going to do this easily, and they'll have to be pulled kicking and screaming, not because it's something that isn't understood or isn't provable, but because the power structure of as it is set depowers them and empowers those who think the right way. So this is a good introduction into the occult sciences so you understand how all this kind of technology is really based on. And it's not based on all these namby-pamby terms out there that make people look like idiots, and these silly occultists and their bizarre practices and their homosexual sex societies and all the other things that are in many instances directly perpetrated to make occultism look bad and be depowered. It's not based on any of that. It's based on understanding the entire universe and how things in the universe function. So subatomic fields are alive in 50 galaxies away from here, on 1 million planets from here, as it is alive here. So it's a universal, or really universal, meaning the universe. And people, I don't know if people understand what the universe is, but that means all the galaxies, all everything. It means everything. It doesn't mean a galaxy. We're in the Milky Way galaxy, but there are many galaxies out there. And I like the term intergalactic. It kind of gives an understanding of a connectedness to the universe. But the subatomic particle understanding, energy field energies, particles, it's all woven together, but this understanding is how the entire universe works. And it's best to start thinking in those terms instead of getting caught in the box of stupid reality that common science, who, as I said, can't figure out how to have decent free energy and can't cure pimples. Should we in any way give these people credit? I mean, really? When there's such little achievement and trillions have been spent on medical and energy and absolutely nothing has come from it because of corruption and stupidity? I mean, why should we in any way give these people credit for anything? They're the people that are off the mark. They're the people that need to seek higher answers, not the occult scientist who's always been there, preaching and understanding what truth is. So remember, people, there is no reality until the occult scientist creates it. Question everything, believe nothing, question all authority, trust absolutely no one, and learn it, be it, and do it, and let the guild be your guide.